The reality is it's exhausting. It's demanding. It's a lot of sacrifice. It is worth it though. So I always say again, another cliche, just be ready for the marathon because it's not a sprint. There are a lot of people that get burnt out. There are a lot of people that pivot, that leave the industry altogether, and that's fine too, to each their own. But if you're truly passionate about this, keep chipping away day by day to find ways to create, to grow, to expand in what you're doing within your career.
Hi again, and welcome into episode 10 of STAA's Next Level Sportscasting. I'm your host, Michael Watring, and in this episode, we're pleased to be joined by somebody that has literally done just about everything in this field. They've covered just about every single league in this field as well. She's a former three-time All-American soccer player as well as a Hall of Famer. She's a sports anchor and analyst. Her work has been seen on NBC, ESPN, USA Curling, so many different outlets. And our guest today is Renee Washington. Renee, thanks so much for the time. I list off all those accolades, but I want to go back. What do you remember most about the first time that you were ever on air?
Oof. Wow. Well, first of all, thank you for the kind introduction. It's a pleasure to join you, and I'm such a fan and so proud of everything you've been doing, Mike. I think for me, when I think back truly to the first time, it was as an MMJ. I was in local news, and I remember I did a high school boys lacrosse game that I put together like an MMJ package for, and I did voiceover. At that time, I didn't even do a stand-up or anything on camera because it was my very first package. I had to turn around from actually, I'm sorry, it was baseball. It wasn't lacrosse. It was baseball. And I still can like picture it kind of vividly of that day on the baseball field. And I was just nervous. I was awful. I was, yeah, it was not great, but it was learning a lot because I also was at that time covering high school spring sports. So I was covering baseball, softball, lacrosse for boys and girls lacrosse. And that was my first exposure to those sports from a reporter standpoint. So not only was it my first package that I was putting together as an MMJ, which as anybody knows is a multimedia journalist. Now they have like cell phone journalists, which you go out with a phone. At that time it was you go out with a camera, a tripod, a mic, no light, no help, and you record everything. So I was adjusting, learning all that, adjusting to a new role as an intern, and adjusting to covering and like scorekeeping for baseball. Oh yeah, it was overwhelming, but clearly memorable since I still remember it over 10 years later.
Yeah, no doubt. You always remember part of those first moments, even though it might be a struggle at first. And along those lines, you have done just about everything that you can do, from an MMJ to reporting to hosting to being an analyst to being play-by-play. How do all of those areas ultimately overlap with each other?
I think something that I've enjoyed is just how different each of those areas are in terms of the skills you use, the knowledge, the communities, and definitely when you look at sport to sport, a women's soccer versus curling versus baseball versus basketball, very different. And so just knowing how to pull from each of them and create my own lane in that regard. And I remember being told to just pick a sport, to pick an aspect of broadcast, and then it was too much for me to take on being a sideline reporter and a color commentator and play-by-play and hosting shows and just all the things. And so I personally wanted to learn as much as I possibly could. And through each of those, it does force me to learn something different. You know, when I stepped into my first USA curling broadcast as someone that was new to the sport, it made me have to approach the sport and prep totally different than I would doing an NWSL game, which is something that I could eat and sleep, talk, forward, backwards, day and night. So I think it just the challenge of each sport and how do I connect with that audience in a way where they feel like I've been playing baseball, soccer, curling, whatever the sport may be my entire life. It's easier when you've actually played the sport, soccer, basketball, track. But what about the sports I haven't? So honestly, it's just been fun to learn how to be myself, how to bring the knowledge and the balance of all the moving parts. Similar to actually what my first day was like on air.
let's hop into the curling aspect of things. Many people enjoy it once every 4 years, but they don't necessarily understand the rules of it. You recently covered the Olympic trials as we get ready for the Olympics here in a couple months. How were you able to prepare for that, and what was the experience like covering the trials?
So the tricky part about covering a sport like curling, as you mentioned, which really only rises to prominence around the Olympics, is how do you find the research, the prep, the information that you need to learn how to talk about it? It's one thing to watch a sport, but to be a part, and you obviously know this, Michael, to be a part of a broadcast requires you to be able to break it down, talk about it, inform people on what's going on. What is each player trying to do depending on the positioning of the stones in the house, and how are they throwing, what's their weight look like, what's the pace and the timing out of the hack, just the little, even the terms themselves of knowing what they mean. What is the hog line, how are they sweeping, what are they trying to do here? So it's challenging to try to figure out, how do I present this to the audience in a way that I don't sound completely ignorant and unaware and seem like I don't have the knowledge, and make sure I'm bringing personality, knowledge, and research. So I honestly started, for curling specifically, just watching old curling broadcasts. And I was fortunate working with Tyler George, who's won an Olympic gold medal, working with Dean Gemmell, who leads the USA curling team and is a former curler himself as well. The curling community in general is very small, close-knit, so a lot of former medalists and curlers are still actively involved. So everybody, I could pick their brain and ask them questions. I did that. I was just a sponge asking questions. And for me, it was, this might seem basic, but talk to me like you're talking to a child. Like, I want to make sure I can not only understand it, but comprehend how to say it. Because it's like learning a new language. And I remember when I first started learning Spanish, as I do have a Spanish minor, you have to learn how to understand and comprehend and process, what does this mean? And how do I say something back that makes sense? So just a lot of research, but of course, because it's an Olympic sport, some of those broadcasts were in other languages. It was a lot, but it was a lot of just like pulling different pieces. I even did like a basic curling 101 video just to learn, like, what do I need to know here? So I think that's with anything. With anything you're doing in this industry, you have to prep and over prep, honestly, just so you make sure you're always having all your T's crossed, all your I's dotted.
Along those lines, particularly for curling, there is a group of the audience that knows every word that you just said, knows every bit of the tactics and the analytics and everything that goes on. But there's probably a wider group that has no idea any of those things. How do you balance trying to ensure that that one segment understands that you are an expert, but the other segment is understanding what is actually happening?
That's the tricky part about being a broadcaster in any capacity, whether you're hosting a show, doing a pregame, halftime, or postgame show on the sidelines. You always recognize that your audience has a wide range of not only knowledge, but age and gender biases and backgrounds. And you have to figure out, how do I best connect with all of them? And in a way that's authentic and genuine, because you don't want to come across, if I was just to spit out a bunch of curling terms and knowledge, I would lose people. But if I was to come into it like, well, what does that mean? What are they throwing? Then I would lose people the other way. So you have to find a way to blend the two. And for me, I actually pull from, especially as a former soccer player, there are so many people that watch soccer that, as you mentioned, fit in those categories of expert, diehard, watch it every day, can talk about every aspect of the history and who won this championship and who won the treble and all the different things. And then you have the others that might not know anything about soccer except that it uses a ball and it's played outside. Like, they might know nothing. And so through my own experiences of trying to make sure in soccer, which is the opposite of curling, a sport I can talk about very easily, how do I blend all the different audiences? It allows me to transfer that into something like curling. So one of the biggest things that I did was pick people's brains, and from the beginning, just kind of ease into it. Like, my first broadcast was actually back in February, and I was a part of the mixed doubles trials for the Winter Olympics. And then this past one was the men's and women's trials back in November in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, beautiful place. And so I just started really slow, easing into it. The first couple broadcasts, I didn't try to over do it. I try to just kind of stick to what are the core things I need to be saying here? Which end is it? Who has hammer? Who's throwing first? What's the lineup? The very basic things that honestly across sports we can talk about. All right, it's a matchup of the top seed versus there are always things that in sports, regardless of sport, someone's trying to win, someone's trying to lose. There's a coach, there's players, they're competing, there's injuries. Like those are the core things that no matter what, you can always lean on. And I try to just stick to that basic foundation. And then as I generated more confidence and knowledge, I was adding more to it to the point that people actually thought I was a curler, which was the most fascinating and massive compliment anyone could have said. Which curling club are you from? That was the moment I was like, okay, I'm doing my part.
Yeah, I can see it. I can see you out there on the ice throwing those stones around.
No, not at all.
Your career is fascinating for anybody that knows you or anybody that will look at your resume because you were a Hall of Fame soccer player. You've been an analyst at the highest levels in this country. You've also done literally just about everything else. You've hosted podcast shows. You worked for Front Office Sports as an anchor, and you interviewed some of the biggest names in the entire sports world.
Yeah.
How would you describe navigating this career to this point in your life?
It is interesting because I almost find myself reluctant to even tell people like what I'm doing these days. Because beyond even just sports broadcasting and reporting, I'm a motivational speaker. I'm a content creator. I do a bunch of brand partnerships and collaborations and have other endeavors. I'm writing a book. Like there's so many other things that it's like, where do I begin? I need like almost just a one sheeter that I can bring along with me everywhere I start a conversation. But I will say to your question, I feel like for me, it's just allowed me to learn who I am. And through all of this, especially such as my experience with front office sports and interviewing people, whether it's top athletes like Tom Brady, Tim Howard, Carly Lloyd, Hulk Hogan before he passed, weeks before he passed, nonetheless, or top executives of Jimmy Pitaro and ESPN, Fox Sports, and the different execs and VPs of the massive networks across the world. It was something that I didn't even realize the magnitude of in these moments. I've had moments to sit in the room with, at one point it was Maria Taylor, Stephen A. Smith, that I'm sitting in the room with, Clay Travis. We're all just sitting there casually chatting. Like it's just this industry, it happens. It's a lot of unknown. It's a lot of things that no matter how much you prepare and you do research and you feel like you're checking off boxes and moving according to step by step, it just throws you from one to the other. And the crazy thing is, as much as it throws you into the unknown of great surprises, it also can throw you into the unknown of bad ones. How many layoffs do we see? How many shows do we see get canceled? How many times do we see, people losing their jobs? And in the past, over the years, I've seen that firsthand. So I think for me, I just always try to stay grounded because it's never been about the quote unquote celebrities or big names or, being able to interview, whoever, the Johnny Manziel and talking about the NCAA and his Heisman experience. It's never been about that for me. It's been using my platform. It's been bringing stories that need to be shared. It's been being able to connect with an audience in a positive way that whether it's just seeing representation or feeling like they're a part of the conversation, I'm bringing something different. So I don't even know if that answers your question, but through all of this, as you navigate through, you can't get, it's very cliche, but you really can't get too high, can't get too low. You have to find a way to just keep going the course, taking it day by day. And it's definitely taught me how do I create something and build something within my career that's needed in this space. There are millions of podcasts, YouTubers, reporters, you name it. There's a lot of people on air, but I want to make sure I'm always doing something that allows me to separate myself from others, that make people want to follow me as a person and connect with me as a person. So that's, I think, the biggest thread through everything I do is how do I continue being myself, bringing my authentic personality when it makes sense, of course, having fun with it and ensuring that I'm continuing to grow in the positive impact I'm making. And if that's happening, the interviews will happen, the opportunities will open, the doors will open if I'm doing things with integrity in the right way.
What advice do you give somebody that's either in college, getting ready to transition to the professional world, or somebody that has just started that might be going through some of, like you said, the bumps in this career that you might not expect when you're first starting out?
There's a lot of advice, and I always try to think what's the most important that they need to know. I think one that I recognized very quickly, and being an athlete actually helped with this tremendously, is don't sit back and just wait for things to fall into your lap. There is no easy path. There are a lot of ups and downs and starting over, pivoting, road, speed bumps in the road and forks in the road, and just a lot that no class, no internship, no amount of research prep can prepare you for. And I lean heavily into my faith to help do that. You have to find a way to navigate through that because this industry, especially, but any industry, especially in the world today, is not for the weak. This is not something where you just punch a clock, a timestamp in and out and check you're done. You have to always be innovating, creating, stretching yourself, and finding ways to continue to, you know, create opportunities for yourself. So I think it's just be ready for the grind. Don't go into it for the shallow reasons. Again, a lot of times I'll hear people say, oh, this looks like such a fun job. You get to meet celebrities. I'm standing there with people like Issa Rae and Serena Williams and her husband and daughter that I'm casually just having a conversation with Alexis, Serena, and little Olympia. That's a very small percentage of it. The reality is it's exhausting. It's demanding. It's a lot of sacrifice. It is worth it though. So I always say again, another cliche, just be ready for the marathon because it's not a sprint. There are a lot of people that get burnt out. There are a lot of people that pivot, that leave the industry altogether, and that's fine too, to each their own. But if you're truly passionate about this, keep chipping away day by day to find ways to create, to grow, to expand in what you're doing within your career.
I'll take you as an example here. You're a three-time All-American. You're a Hall of Fame soccer player. But being an analyst in soccer is challenging because if Alex Morgan retires, she's immediately going to jump to the front of the line because people are going to want one of the most recognizable names and faces in that particular sport. With that said, you have carved out multiple paths without your career. What advice do you give to college athletes that might want to be in this field, that might be a Division II star, but might not have the ability to ultimately work their way up to the top levels of professional leagues as an analyst?
That's a great point. And the reality is more and more sports are leaning into former players and former coaches being in the booth, being involved in the broadcast in some capacity. And as you mentioned, the bigger the name, the more they're typically a shoo-in. It's always been that way in like the NBA. You've seen Shaq and Charles Barkley and Kenny Smith and different people, whether it's hosting shows or the Reggie Millers and Candace Parkers and Janae Agumike's that are involved in games and studio shows. But we're seeing that even more in other sports. Football, of course, has also picked up on that and been doing a bigger job of that. You're seeing that in soccer directly. And it's wild because I had a chance to play professional soccer. I'm a Hall of Famer. I have all these records and history that I made throughout the course of my D1 career at LaSalle University. Yet I might as well have never played soccer when it comes to some of these opportunities because, as you mentioned, and I've heard this directly, I was told I didn't play professional soccer long enough. And I'm like, that's wild because I didn't know there was a barometer of how long you had to play professionally to be able to be a soccer analyst. So the industry is evolving and you have to learn how to change with the times. That's just the reality of it. I've always believed somebody's going to say yes, but somebody's also going to say no. So for every no I get, there's somebody else that's going to want me on their broadcast, want me on their network. And so that's why I continue to find ways. And what I recommend is, regardless if you are a Hall of Famer, if you played intramurals, if you played rec sports, you played sports. So there's something that you can pull from in that experience that is beneficial to help in your sports broadcasting career, and lean on that. Don't be ashamed. I remember there were times in my career I was ashamed to actively speak up about that. I was a top 50 Women of the Year across all NCAA women's sports nominee in my senior year. Like I have accolades that are in a very small minority of people that can say that. So find those areas that you can lean on. And it could be even as basic as I was a captain of my team. I helped my team win our conference championship. And now you can pull from those things into how you can help on the broadcast because sports broadcasting is still a team. It's still, you're still a team working together to accomplish a goal. And so I think there's always going to be the separation of those truly legendary retired athletes that are going to take spaces in the booth, and that's fine too. But there's also still going to be space for others as well. If you're committed enough, if you're working hard enough, if you have the background for it. So don't be ashamed if you are a D2, D3, or even like myself, I was a mid-conference Division I soccer player. I played. I was doing 6 a.m.s. I was a two-sport athlete in college. There's still so many aspects that correlate. And I know a lot of times when I do interviews with other athletes, especially, but even coaches, I always sprinkle in there at some point how, oh yeah, I'm a three-time All-American Division I soccer player. I'm a Hall of Famer. And then instantly I can see the shift of them kind of like, oh, you get it. And I've actually heard them say that. Oh, so you get it. I'm like, yes, I speak the language. So find a way and know that it won't always open doors for you because to your point, the reality is if Alex Morgan and myself are going for a job, Alex Morgan's probably is going to get the job. But that's okay. There are plenty of opportunities in this industry and don't be so narrow-minded and fixated on just the one. Keep applying, keep trying, and there's more than one way to be successful in this industry. That's the beauty of it.
And part of that is in today's world, you control your own brand and you're terrific on social media. How has social media helped you promote yourself and promote your career?
I'm so glad you asked about social media because the reality is also through social media, I see tons of creators that are getting very prestigious jobs and opportunities because of their brand, because they've been creating reels and TikToks and something that's captivating that it's allowed them to be at these activations around All-Star weeks and Super Bowl weeks and different components. So I've actively also made sure to tap into that too, because personally, I've never wanted to just be one thing. I've never wanted all my eggs in one basket. I never wanted to just be considered just a sports reporter. And so through content creation, it does allow me to build my brand. I use my undergrad degree in public relations as well to be able to tap into the marketing, the social media management components, as well as just knowing that in this industry, in this world, especially, your social media, a lot of times, especially in our industry, is your validation. It is your credibility check. And a lot of people, along with who you are as an athlete, so there's one lane of did you play the sport? How high of a level did you play it at? But another way to get in is I've got 1 million followers on social media, or this is my social media. Then when they look at it, they're like, okay, we want to hire you. So that's another avenue, much like you just touched on with the former, like an Alex Morgan. Another true way to get in is through your social media following, your presence, the engagement. People are looking for that. So I've tried and made sure to create on my own platforms through aspects that align with me. It's behind the scenes, it's fashion, it's travel since I travel a lot. It's giving people a glimpse into my life. Of course, not fully into my life. It's like a 10% glimpse, I would say. But when you have a chance to build on your own brand, first of all, it's something you can control. It's free. It's not easy to do, but it's very valuable and it does open up networking, jobs, and other opportunities through that. So highly, highly, highly recommend for any, especially students, maximize, build your social media, have a positive social media brand because more than a resume, and I just posted a video about this recently, actually, more than a resume or even a reel, a lot of jobs are going to hire you, sadly, or maybe in a good way, based on your social media. It is your resume. It is what gets you jobs and gets you hired a lot of times.
Speaking of getting hired in this field, I have so many people ask me, how did you get to the point that you're at? And there is not a true linear path, but how would you tell somebody that is starting off in this field, here's how you need to go about communicating with people, trying to find openings, trying to find jobs, because I know for you, and certainly for me too, a lot of the jobs that I've gotten aren't necessarily posted on job boards, take the 3 months to go through candidates, et cetera, et cetera. So what would you say to somebody that is trying to get in this field about how they can go about finding jobs?
It is wild because I can actually count on one hand the amount of jobs over the last 10 years that I've gotten because they were posted on a job posting. Everything else has been through word of mouth, through I know someone and they know there's an opening and they pitch my name, people speaking my names into rooms that I had not stepped into yet. So knowing that, what I always tell people is yes, of course, pay attention to job postings, have that resume and reel ready. I know I just mentioned your social media is your resume, but still have that resume, have that reel, have the entire portfolio ready that at any given moment you can share it. But the crazy part and the difficult part about this industry that I always try to warn, especially younger professionals, is that there is no blueprint. This isn't a job where you go get your like law school, becoming a lawyer, go to law school, get your degree. You've got steps. There are no steps here. There are people successful that have doctorates. There are people that don't have a college degree. There are people that are in college that are bursting on the scenes, and there are people that maybe don't get their debut until in their 40s or 50s. This is an industry open to literally everyone. If you have an interest, if you have a way to build. So there are things you can do. It's networking, it's attending, get yourself into financially, of course, make sure it makes sense, but as many rooms as you can. Shake hands with people, have conversations face to face, reach out to people. If you can't get there in person, reach out to people through social media to set up calls and have virtual coffee chats to be able to learn about them. And then also make sure you are creating your own content. That's why I do it on my own pages. Find ways, it could be a podcast, YouTube, it could be just reels, whatever you want to do. Maybe you're a writer, you do freelance writing. Find ways to create your own to get your brand going. And then just keep applying because you're going to get rejected a lot. And a lot of times you won't even hear back that you've been rejected. But that's par for the course. There are tons of opportunities. Keep finding ways to get your name out there, networking with people. And the reality is, like I also try to tell people, many of the jobs that I got that were through networking, it was at least a year later. It wasn't, I meet this person today, I get the job tomorrow. It was, I might meet you today. We're having a conversation December 2025, and it might take a year, 2 years, 3 years. Honestly, one was 5 years later that now that person's circling back. Hey, I remember and I've been following you and I think you're a great fit. So plant those seeds, get your name out there, continue to keep your name in a positive way out there. And there are always people watching you. I actually learned that from a recruiter with a massive network that said that they always are watching you to see how you progress in your career. And you might randomly, quote unquote, hear from them, but the reality is they've been watching you for like 8 years, not to be creepy or anything. So if people are watching, make sure you're giving them a good show of who you are as a person and professional.
My final question is this. I think when you're in college as a sportscaster, you think to yourself, I want to be in a major network. I want to be for a major team.
Yeah.
But I think as you get older, you start to consider success as something different. How do you define success personally in this field?
To me, success is happiness, it's impact. It's do I enjoy going to work every day? I've worked with massive networks, ABC, CBS, ESPN, NBC, you name it, I've been there. And not every quote unquote good opportunity. And I've had people from the outside say, oh my gosh, you're so lucky you're working with this person or this network. And I was miserable. So your values start to change because when you are young and a little bit more naive, you're just wanting the flashy, shiny objects. What looks good on paper? What looks good at the family get-togethers? What can I brag about to my friends? But that doesn't help you sleep at night. That doesn't help when you have to work holidays or late nights and early mornings and you secretly hate being at that job. So success is, can I find the right balance of being happy? If I'm showing up every day enjoying what I'm doing, the rest will fall into place. Financially, the opportunities, but I don't want to be on a show miserable because it's going to show in my demeanor and my questions. If I'm on that broadcast and I'm not happy, you will not get a good version of me. you're going to get a very guarded version and just someone that's kind of going through the motions. And that's not the way to live life. So in my 30s, I've now recognized success is, can I get to that family get together? Can I go catch up with my friends sometimes? Do I have flexibility, which I do, thankfully? Can I get up and take that vacation or that trip? And also for me, having the impact that I can know what I'm doing is making a difference to inspire someone else and to help someone else. So don't just chase the checks and money and the flashy jobs. Chase what aligns, for me at least, I chase what aligns with myself spiritually, ethically, and professionally, because then I know the rest will be falling into place of how I'm able to show up every day.
Renee, this has been so enlightening. Really appreciate you taking a few minutes and congrats on all the success.
Thank you. Same to you as well. I appreciate you allowing me to join you. Glad we're twinning in the red. And I'm always happy and rooting for you from a distance. So keep doing fantastic work, my friend.
Thank you so much. Our guest in episode 10 of STAA's Next Level Sportscasting was Renee Washington, three-time All-American, Hall of Fame soccer player, sports anchor and analyst for NBC, ESPN, USA Curling, and so much more. We appreciate you watching this episode. Until next time, I'm Michael Wattrang saying so long.